History is full of kings who wanted to be gods. They built monuments to their own names. They shed blood to own the dirt beneath their feet. But there was one man who was different. He didn't want the world. He was simply given it. His name was Dhul-Qarnayn, the man of two horns. He didn't wear a crown of gold to look pretty. His crown was heavy iron. It pressed against his skull, a constant reminder of the weight he carried. This wasn't a story of a hero. This was a story of a tool. Think about the most powerful person you can imagine. Now imagine that person knowing they own absolutely nothing. That is where our journey begins. Most rulers wait for the world to come to them. Dhul-Qarnayn did the opposite. He marched. Close your eyes and hear it. 1,000,000 boots hitting the dry earth at the exact same time. The sound isn't music. It's a rhythmic, industrial thud that shakes the horizon. Dust fills the air. It gets in your throat. It makes your eyes sting. But the army does not stop. Why? Because God gave him the asbab, the means, the pathways. To us, a mountain is a wall. To him, it was a door. To us, the ocean is a dead end. To him, it was a highway. He had the keys to the physical world. But here is the part that should scare you. He had the power to crush any city he saw. He could have burned everything, but he didn't. He looked at his vast maps, maps that had no edges, and he saw a responsibility. He saw a debt he owed to the Creator. You might think having everything would make you feel like a god. For Dhul-Qarnayn, it made him feel like a servant. He was moving toward the edges of the earth, toward things that shouldn't exist. He was heading for the setting of the sun, but he wasn't prepared for what he was about to find in the dark water. What happens when a man with ultimate power meets a people with absolutely nothing? The answer isn't what you expect.
Dhul-Qarnayn marched west. He didn't stop until the land ran out. Imagine standing at the literal edge of the world. The air here doesn't smell like salt. It smells like sulfur. It smells like rotting eggs and stagnant mud. Before him lay a massive spring of dark, murky water. The sun was setting. It didn't look golden or peaceful. It looked like a bleeding wound sinking into thick black oil. This was the end of the map. And in this desolate place, he found people. They were lost. They were broken. They were a people who had forgotten God. Now, put yourself in their shoes. A massive army is at your gates. A king with an iron crown stands over you. You expect him to kill you. You expect him to take your food and burn your homes. That's what kings do, right? Dhul-Qarnayn stood at a crossroads. He had total power. He could execute every single one of them, and no one on earth could stop him. Or he could show mercy. He heard a voice in his heart. It was a test from the Creator. Either punish them, the choice went, or treat them with kindness. Most men would have chosen the sword. It's faster, it's easier. But Dhul-Qarnayn said something that changed history. He didn't just kill everyone. He drew a line in the sand. He said, if you do wrong, we will punish you. But if you do good, we will protect you. He chose justice over blood. He didn't want slaves. He wanted a world that worked. He left the murky waters behind, but his work was just beginning. He had conquered the west. Now he turned his eyes toward the east. He was heading for a place where the sun never stops burning, and what he found there would make the murky spring look like a paradise. Do you think you could stay fair if you held the world in your hand? Most people can't, but Dhul-Qarnayn wasn't most people. He was looking for something else, something much more dangerous.
Dhul-Qarnayn turned his back on the dark waters of the west. He marched east. He followed the sun until the world began to change. The ground became hard. The air became thin. Then the shade vanished. He had reached a place where the sun doesn't just shine, it attacks. Imagine a land with no trees, no houses, no caves, not even a single blade of grass to hide under. The people here had nothing between their skin and the fire in the sky. Their skin was cracked like the desert floor. Their eyes were constantly squinted. To any other king, these people looked like savages. A normal conqueror would have forced them to build cities. He would have made them slaves to civilize them. But Dhul-Qarnayn didn't reach for his sword. He didn't order his engineers to start digging. He stood there, sweating under his heavy iron crown, and he watched. He realized something profound. God had made them this way. This was their life. Their struggle was between them and the sun. He didn't try to change what God had decreed. He showed the ultimate form of power. He left them alone. But don't think his journey was over. Far from it. He had seen the west. He had seen the east. Now he turned his army toward the north. He was heading toward the Great Barrier. He was about to find something that wasn't just poor or lost. He was about to find something that was pure, unstoppable evil. What do you do when you meet a monster that cannot be reasoned with? Dhul-Qarnayn was about to find out.
Dhul-Qarnayn turned his army north. He marched until the heat of the east died. Now the air was cold. It tasted like wet stone. He reached a massive gap between two jagged mountain ranges. These cliffs were so high they swallowed the sky. Here he found a people living in a state of pure, raw terror. They didn't speak his language. They could barely understand speech at all. Their eyes were wide. Their hands were shaking. They weren't just afraid of a king. They were afraid of monsters. Beyond that mountain pass lived the tribes of Yajuj and Majuj, Gog and Magog. To these people, they weren't just enemies. They were a flood of chaos. Imagine a sound that isn't human. 1,000,000 guttural screams echoing through the rock. The ground under your feet starts to vibrate. That isn't an earthquake. That's them. They were coming. The locals were desperate. They crawled to Dhul-Qarnayn and offered him everything they had, gold, jewels, their entire life savings. They said, "Build us a wall. We will pay you anything. Just keep them out." This was the ultimate test of greed. Most leaders would have taken the money and run. But Dhul-Qarnayn looked at the gold, and then he looked at the terrified children. He said something that shocked them. "What my lord has given me is better than your money." He didn't want their gold. He wanted their hands. He wasn't going to build a simple wall. He was going to build something the world had never seen before. But to do it, they had to move fast, because the horde was getting closer. The vibrations were getting louder. If they didn't finish in time, there would be no one left to protect. How do you stop a force that consumes everything in its path? You don't use stone. You use something much heavier. And the heat was about to become unbearable.
Dhul-Qarnayn looked at the gold and pushed it away. He didn't want their money. He wanted their sweat. He looked at the trembling people and gave a simple order: "Bring me blocks of iron." This wasn't going to be a stone wall. Stone cracks, stone crumbles. He needed something stronger. Imagine the scene. Thousands of men hauling massive slabs of black iron into the mountain pass. They stacked them higher and higher until the gap between the two cliffs was filled. But a pile of iron isn't a wall. It's just a pile. He needed to fuse it. He needed fire. He ordered them to bring massive bellows. Imagine the sound, a rhythmic, deafening roar of air being pumped into a furnace. The heat became a physical wall. It singed their hair. It turned their skin red. The air tasted like pennies and smoke. He told them, "Blow until the iron itself turns into fire." But he wasn't done yet. This is the moment where most people would have stopped. But what happened next changed the world. He called for copper, tons of it. They melted it down until it flowed like glowing liquid lava.
He poured the molten copper directly into the cracks of the iron blocks. Think about that. The hissing was loud enough to burst eardrums. Huge clouds of white steam exploded into the sky. The liquid metal filled every tiny hole. It turned the iron into a solid, unbreakable mountain of metal. No one could climb it. No one could dig through it. The screams of the tribes on the other side started to fade. They were trapped. Dhul-Qarnayn stood back and looked at the glowing wall. He didn't take credit for it. He said, "This is a mercy from my Lord." But there was a warning attached to that mercy. He knew this wall wouldn't last forever. One day it would turn to dust. Can you imagine the power it takes to seal away an entire army of monsters? He did it with iron and faith. But the clock is ticking, because the prophecy says that one day that wall will break, and when it does, nothing on earth will be able to stop what comes out. The fire finally died down. The steam cleared. Standing between the two mountains was no longer a gap, but a mountain made of metal. It was smooth, it was cold, it was perfect. Dhul-Qarnayn walked up to the wall and touched it. The iron and copper had fused into one single solid block. On the other side, silence, but only for a second. Then the scratching started. Imagine millions of fingernails clawing at a metal door. Imagine the sound of 1,000 hammers hitting the wall at once. The tribes of Yajuj and Majuj were trapped. They tried to climb it, but it was too slick. They tried to dig through it, but it was too hard. They were screaming, but the sound was muffled by tons of iron. For the first time in generations, the people in the valley could breathe. The air felt cool. The terror was gone. Any other king would have carved his name into that wall. He would have built a statue of himself right in front of it. But watch what Dhul-Qarnayn does next. He doesn't cheer. He doesn't brag. He falls to his knees. He looked at the people and said, "This is a mercy from my Lord." He knew the truth. He knew he didn't build this wall. God allowed him to build it. But here is the terrifying part. He gave them a warning that should keep you up at night. He said that when the promise of God comes true, this massive iron mountain will turn into dust. It will crumble like dry sand. Think about that. We aren't talking about if the wall breaks. We are talking about when. Right now, as you listen to this, they are still behind that wall. They are still digging. They are still waiting. Every single day, they get closer to the surface. What happens when the iron finally gives way? The story of Dhul-Qarnayn ends here, but our story is just getting started, because one day the wall will fall, and there will be nowhere left to hide. The story of the king ends, but the story of the wall does not. For thousands of years, that iron barrier has stood. It is cold, it is silent, it is forgotten by most. But don't be fooled. Behind that metal, something is moving. Every single morning, the tribes of Yajuj and Majuj wake up and start digging. They scrape at the iron with their teeth and their nails. They dig until they can almost see the sunlight through the cracks. They say, "Tomorrow we will break through." But for centuries they forgot to say one thing, "If God wills." And so, every night, the wall heals itself. It becomes stronger than it was the day before. But one day, that will change. Imagine a morning where they finally say those words. Imagine the first crack appearing in the copper skin of the wall. It won't be a slow break. It will be an explosion. The iron will turn to dust. The mountains will shake. And then the horde comes. They won't walk. They will pour down the mountains like a flood of black water. They will drink every lake until they are dry. They will consume everything in their path. You might think we are safe behind our own walls today. We have technology, we have armies, we have money. But Dhul-Qarnayn's story teaches us a hard truth. No wall is permanent. No empire lasts forever. The iron was just a delay. True safety isn't found in metal or stone.
It is found in the one who created the iron in the first place. The king with the iron crown is gone. His empire is dust, but his message remains. Power is a loan, safety is a gift, and the end is a promise. Are you ready for the day the wall comes down? Because when it does, the time for talking is over.